in part because there's a great dependence in the United States on TSMC, and in that way on Taiwan for different supply chains, for electronics, for semiconductors, for a lot of our economy. There's been a lot of nervousness about Taiwan. What are the chances that there is some brewing military conflict over this question of Taiwan in the coming decades, and how can we avoid it?
It's one of these really worrisome issues that there isn't an easy. I think experts who tell you they know what X, Y, and Z about this is are deluding themselves. Probably there's so many variables.
Maybe you could just elaborate the possible clues we have.
So, with talking to people in Taiwan and from Taiwan, there are a couple things that are clear. One is that daily life in Taiwan is not people waking up each morning, living their life based on the fact that there's in such a perilous kind of predicament, that it's life goes on, and a lot of people are, feel very, very fortunate to be in Taiwan. There are many reasons why it seems like a great place to live in many ways. So even though this is hanging, but at the same time, there is an awareness of things that increase precariousness. And there was a lot of concern with the invasion of Ukraine, and watching how the response to that was. And there was a sense of it being analogous. There was a sense that Xi Jinping would be watching the response to Putin and seeing what he would do then. And so then there was a sense of relief, I think, when there was as unified a Western NATO, including the United States, response. And then there's a concern, about the Trump presidency because of Ukraine. At the same time, there are mixed signals. So people are there. I'm sure there are people there who are both saying Trump is going to be tough toward the Chinese Communist Party, and others are going to say, but if he's not as supportive of Ukraine, what does that say for the defense of? So they're not the same situations, but all people have, in a sense, sometimes with unknowable situations, is to look at things that have any degree of parallel connections in other places.
Do you think Xi Jinping knows what he's going to do in the next 5-10 years with Taiwan? Or is it really like there's a loose historical notion that Taiwan should be part of China with Xi Jinping and the Communist Party? Believe that?
That loose idea was accepted. Chiang Kai-shek and Mao both thought that these two places were part of, somehow destined to be the same. It was just under that period, Chiang Kai-shek thought, how long until I take over the mainland and it all becomes the Republic of China? This is not now something that any leader in Taiwan is believing. There is a degree to which that remains a kind of sense within the Chinese Communist Party leadership as a eventuality. I don't think there's a set plan, in part because I think it is also dependent on what the kind of costs in various realms would be of doing that. I think it still does. I think it's still, one scenario would be possibly a sense of becoming strong enough to not have to worry about consequences. I think another, I still think to some extent more, would be a sense of weakness or precarity of maintaining power domestically and needing to do something to distract.
And another complexity about this is it's not always so clear, the line between no conflict and conflict. So there's a lot of gray zone tactics of nonviolent pressure that China could exude. So you could do non-military violence. It could then escalate that to nonviolent military intimidation. And all of this has consequences for the United States because there's a messaging thing going on here. And then, of course, that could then go to a full-on do-as-you're-told actions that come at a high risk of a hot military conflict. So basically, don't do military violence, but just full-on pressure, ordering Taiwan to do things. And there, it's like the only way to respond is with violence. You're completely trapped. You're saying no. You have to say no with a military force behind it, and then what do you do? And at every step in this, it's such an unstable, nonlinear, dynamical system where anything could just unintended consequences can happen, and it could just escalate in a matter of days, if not hours. And so, like, um, this is where I think it's really important to find mechanisms and tactics and strategies for de-escalation. Which is why this trade war that's happening, one of the nice things of being so connected by trade is it creates a disincentive for any of this kind of posturing. Because I do agree with you. I think it will start, as these things often do, as a kind of military sort of early steps posturing in order to maintain power internally. So that's China will just create military conflict of different kinds in order to distract. But then how does that escalate?
As if all that wasn't complicated enough, Taiwan isn't just one place or one island. There are islands that are closer to mainland Jinmen, and their degrees of integration. And anyway, so it's a but your comment about integration of trade and sort of having being a check on kind of there's a Chinese writer who fascinating guy, Han, who was a race car driver and a filmmaker and a bad boy novelist. Anyway, in his heyday, he was an interesting kind of blogger who was testing the edges of things. And he had this blog post where he was talking about this was in the early 2000s. He was talking about how China was building the massive Three Gorges Dam project. And he said some people are saying building these dams, it could be so easy for the Americans to just just bomb them and destroy our country, and because it would be a massive flood. And he said, but that's really silly. That's a really silly argument, because Americans know that downriver from there, what would be flooded out was the place where their iPhones are built. And they want their iPhones. So that's so this kind of notion, he was making through a humorous point, the way in which interconnectedness can be a check. And interconnectedness can be in all kinds of ways, the flows of people between places, and having people from one place living in another, traveling to another, studying in another. That can actually be something that helps to stabilize the world. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind.